So let's bring in Ross Greenwood. This unemployment rate, Ross, the lowest in 48 years. Financial markets have barely moved on the better than expected result, Ross.
Yeah, it was better than expected. That's the key. And normally financial markets would move on that. But yeah, seeing that the financial markets appear set on where they believe interest rates are headed to in the near future, and that is that eventually the Reserve Bank is going to run out of puff in regards to interest rate rises, and that ultimately markets will revert to something back to normal. But here is the employment data. Unemployment 3.4%. You can see there. It's a bit unusual, this. I should explain it. The employment numbers actually fell. And normally, if the number of jobs out there actually falls like that, you'd expect the unemployment rate to rise. It hasn't done so, and that's largely because of the amount of COVID that was in the community during this month of July, plus also school holidays. That meant that a lot of workers weren't actually in work. Now, full-time workers, of course, would be counted, but those people who are casuals, in particular, would not be counted in those numbers, and that's the reason why you've actually seen a lack of employment, and yet, despite that, the unemployment rate did fall to 3.4%. The second part about this is the number of unemployed people has also dropped by around 20,000 people. It now means that in Australia there are fewer people unemployed than what there are jobs being advertised. And that's another unusual situation. But you can see the trend is down, and many people do suggest that Australia, before this is all over, will see an unemployment rate in the low threes. And that, of course, has bearings on not only the amount of people coming into this country, but then also where interest rates ultimately do end up.
Ross, what did you make of the Employment Minister, Tony Burke, again urging for higher wages to keep up with soaring inflation rate?
Well, this is interesting because you've got to be a little careful what you wish for. Yes, people want higher wages. Yes, people want to keep up with the inflation rate. But if wages rise too quickly and too persistently, then ultimately we will have long-term higher interest rates going alongside it. You can see here wages growth. It's pretty flat, I'd have to say. And that means that real wages after inflation really also are going backwards in real terms. That's why these calls are out there. So Tony Burke did speak a little earlier. Let's just pick up a little of what he had to say.
There is clearly something broken in the system. So effectively, the hydraulic pressure of unemployment being low, putting upward pressure on wages, that pressure's still there. But it's coming through in pipes that have all sorts of leaks coming out of them. Leaks off the back of a previous government trying to drive wages down for 10 years. Leaks in terms of loopholes in the system that allow what were otherwise minimum rates of pay to be able to be undercut. And the huge leak in the system, a bargaining system that has largely stalled.
And just on that, Kieran, it's going to be interesting with the Jobs Summit because a part of it is about Australia's population growth rate and obviously the amount of immigration we allowed in. And given the fact that we're only back at levels half that pre-pandemic, you wonder whether there's going to be some pressure to really try and maintain this pressure for wages to rise by maybe not letting as many people into the country as what there were previously.
And just quickly, before you go, profit results out today. One of them, Origin, produces coal-fired, gas-fired power, renewables. Does it mean its profit boomed?
Well, yes and no. Yes, profit was much better than what it had previously been. It was good. And also on top of that, the dividends have been increased, but it's been tough. And the reason for that is because Origin Energy, like so many other energy retailers, is also a buyer of coal and gas, even though it does produce some of these things along the way. So it's just interesting to watch that. We'll speak with Frank Calabria on our program this afternoon and also address that whole issue about gas shortages and big companies like Origin selling gas overseas, and also whether they should be putting more of that back into the Australian market.